Would you speak a little bit about AI's role with regulation specifically, with it being so I'll go into a little bit more detail. Something like CIS controls, which are highly technical and are really easy to measure,
Mhm.
vary or are largely different from something like CMMC or NIST in some of its deeper versions that have human behaviors that are required to be done. Like, did you check this box? Did you do a background check? Did you, have this type of conversation? Are there processes in place for X, Y, and Z? Is there monthly, annually, quarterly follow up? Those are things that can be hard to measure immediately, and they can
Mhm.
also be hard to measure with their variability across time. So when we start to think about things like cyber insurance and regulation and expectations of businesses around cybersecurity, AI is going to have a big role, but it's largely human behaviors in about 60%, 66% of cybersecurity. So, how do you see AI fitting in on the regulatory side, or the governance side, where there's lots of human activity that has to be considered?
Yeah, it's a great point. So let's start with regulation overall. In fact, in this morning's Wall Street Journal, there's a really interesting article. I can't remember who wrote it. Again, I'm old; my memory fails me sometimes. But it's a really interesting article on don't overregulate AI, so we can help then regulate things you needed to do.
Mm.
And the things that you see is politicians are talking about it, right? And politicians, these aren't technologists, and some of them aren't even born in a decade that's even around my generation, let alone anybody younger generation. And these are the folks that are trying to maybe put some shackles on it to maybe make AI work a certain way or regulate it a certain way. I think that is extraordinarily dangerous. So I think it needs to be a lot more open, unless it's built to do evil. So then you can use it for compliance and regulation. So think about this: when you think about some of those frameworks you brought up, CMMC or NIST or anything you want to take, or maybe get specific into industries like HIPAA on healthcare, FFIEC when it comes to financial services. Obviously, CMMC is going to be huge with the Department of Defense, as long as Doge doesn't cut all that stuff. Well, I guess we'll see. But the whole point is, can AI not just fake, but maybe verify that the things you're saying you're doing are actually being done? And
Mm.
that's something we can actually see as a verification method. Now, here's where that's great. If you're doing these things, like we just went through our ISO 27001, and it was a very intense process, took the better part of a year. Maybe that's a little bit of a lie, 9 months, but it was pretty intense, right? There's so many areas in there, though, that could have completely been automated with AI. I don't see anybody doing those right now. But I think there's a lot of room for that. You're totally going to see that. Now, that's going to put pressure on the organizations that rely on those audits, those certification processes, which all businesses evolve. But how can AI do that? AI can read and understand and summarize and verify more than a human can with less bias in a structured way. So
Yeah.
I think that is going to have a huge play when it comes to regulations and compliance very soon.